want to be the man, you gotta beat the man.
Shadows sleeping in the dead of night. I light the match, they feel my fire. Street I flicker like a war zone flare. They see me rise, but they won't dare. Some man cracks under my stride. Whispers chase me, they collide. Gun dreams heavy like gold chains. Every sorrow that screams my name. Be legendary, feel the fire in your chest. No second guessing, this is your test. Be legendary, break the cage.
Yes, sir. Welcome. 2026, new year, same show. Hoosier Legends Weekly Podcast. We are back at it again after taking some time in the holidays to kind of rest and recharge our batteries. We are excited and ready to go. Want to welcome our co-host, as always, Mr. Mike Walden. Mike, what is going on?
Hey, buddy. Good to be back. Nice long break. Pretty excited to see sports again, and pretty excited to announce, and not to take away anything that you wanted to say, but Tri-West boys basketball did beat the Evil Empire the other day in the Henderson County tournament, so that's always a win for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the pleasure of calling that game on the Tri-West Sports Network last night, and it was pretty much a dismantle show from the beginning, so that's always feels good. And, really that Henderson County tournament, it's always a tough one. There's always some really good teams, whether it's Brownsburg, Plainfield's really strong this year, and we know that Cascade has some athletes. So the Bruins will go on to play Brownsburg. And, I didn't put this as a show topic, but I put a little comment up on my Facebook page about I don't want to hear about Indiana being a basketball state anymore with all these high schools kowtowing to IU football and moving their games from Friday to Thursday. It's like, come on, man, what are we doing here? First off, not everybody likes football. Second of all, not everyone likes IU and is building their schedule around watching them play Friday night. It's like, what if grandma and grandpa were coming into town to watch their grandson play, and now they're going to miss it because you had to move it?
Yeah, I don't understand that. You know what I mean? I know. Listen, I'm not an IU fan, but like when Notre Dame did this, went to the national championship game, we didn't move any games.
Right.
What's the big deal about Indiana? I mean, it's the home state school, right? But I guarantee they wouldn't be doing this if it was Purdue.
That's right.
I know like nationally it's getting a lot of attention, because they were historically the worst college football team in history. And in 2 years, Kurt Signetti has moved them to, going to the semifinals, Big Ten champions for the first time with a Heisman winner, And then, of course, he's got one of the top recruits coming in at quarterback, So he knows how to play this game, and he's doing everything right. It's cool for IU fans, but, I never considered myself a purist or a traditionalist or anything along those lines. Mm-hmm. But, this doesn't feel like college football to me. It's right. It's pay to win, and it's the person like Kurt who, I'm not taking anything away from his coaching abilities, his ability to keep the same offensive defensive coordinator, not letting them go become head coaches. There's a family atmosphere there. There's no denying that, but it's like IU paid $63 million to have this chance of winning this, national championship. Mm-hmm. Would I be upset if I was, if it was Purdue, since I'm a Purdue fan? I don't know, right? Like, of course not. I'd be happy that they were there, but at the same time, it'd be like, I don't know who these players are. Right. How many of these kids, like, do I actually know that I saw them as juniors and now are sophomores and see them as seniors doing well?
Yeah. The game has definitely changed a lot. Yeah, you're right.
I just don't know. I don't know how much of a college sports fan I'm becoming. I like Purdue basketball, because they've done the opposite of what IU basketball has done. They keep guys there for 4 or 5 years, and it's Matt Painter's system, and those kids love playing for him, right? Yep. Where IU is doing the one and dones, and it doesn't work, Right. But in football, it looks like I don't know if they're considered one and dones or not, but each one of them is on a 1-year contract.
Right.
You pick the one that just won a national championship as a Division II quarterback, like LSU did or Ole Miss did, and now he's playing in the semifinals, in Division I. So I don't know, man. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I know. I got you. Well, I'm a U fan. So it's been kind of nice to watch that little bit of a run. I know they were controversial on getting in there, so been nice to see them take down A&M, and then of course Ohio State. That was a dismantling there. So we'll see how they hold up against Trinidad Chambliss tomorrow night. I can't believe that game's tomorrow night. So we'll be watching that.
That's a good question, Justin. If you're a Miami fan, like, what do you think about Carson Beck? Like, you watched him succeed at Georgia and do what he did at Georgia, and now all of a sudden he's playing for you and takes you to the semifinals. Like, do you still feel like Carson Beck is a hurricane, or is he like some guy who just plays quarterback for you?
He's a rent a quarterback for sure. There's no doubt about it. I think obviously Cristobal saw there was a need at the quarterback position, and he was available and, was able to get him. I'm actually more excited. And I think this kind of speaks to what you're saying of like, Mesidor and Bain on defense. Those guys are Miami recruits. And, I still think that there is a lot to be said about the recruiting trail and bringing guys in and developing them in your system. And, I would like to see obviously more of that and return back to more of it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, it kind of feels like you're taken from Georgia to get what you need. But there's also then that, like, you got to keep up with the Joneses. Like, if that's the playing field, if you want to have a chance to compete and win national championships, that's kind of the way you got to play the game, unfortunately, and I've seen a lot of stuff on the message boards about, all right, who are they going to go after? I was kind of surprised there wasn't any talk about Sorsby. I think that's his name, Brendan Sorsby, who I guess just committed to Texas Tech, maybe. I know Lane Kiffin was looking at him for LSU. He's the kid he started at IU, went over to Cincinnati. So I'm sure they're going to jump into the portal and try to find a season, whether it's like you said with Chambliss, like a winner at the D2 level, or someone from a high profile Power 5 conference quarterback that may be transferring. So yeah, I get it. It's different, definitely different than, again, you and I growing up, in the late 80s and 90s, even watching college football when it was just pretty much all recruiting and having guys stay there for 3 or 4 years, and you felt like you got to know them and see their development, and it maybe meant a little bit more when you saw that happen. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. All right. Hey, let's jump into some Hoosier Legends talk here. How about that? It's been a minute since we've been with you guys. So what we thought we'd do here is, we kind of changed the format of the show up a little bit prior to the break. So we're kind of doing a lot of the individual scores on the rundown. We've been able to produce a handful of those, and we'll continue to push those out for those that are wanting to kind of hear a rundown of the scores and kind of a summary of box scores a little bit from each of those. But we wanted to try to bring you up to date on some conference standings. So we're going to start here with boys basketball. Mike, you want to give us an update on where we are with our conference standings as of tonight?
Yeah, so, still pretty young in the season when it comes to actual conference play. And, and some of these games won't be played until the very end of the season. So, it's going to go back and forth here because Triton Central, still number one in the conference, but they're 1-0, right? So they beat Tri-West, and then they haven't played anybody else in our conference, but that's where they're at right now. And Tri-West is 2-1 along with Beech Grove. Monrovia has not played anybody in the conference, so they're 0-0. Speedway is 0-1, and Indian Creek is 0-2. So if you're talking about the whole season, Indian Creek and Speedway, is 3-6 and 3-5. Monrovia is 4-4. Beech Grove is 5-7. Tri-West is 7-3, and Triton Central is 7-2. So still pretty early on, but it looks like Triton Central and Tri-West are kind of separating themselves a little bit. But Indian Creek, Speedway, and Monrovia are right there with them. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you kind of take a look at some trends of what we're seeing up to this point, as you said, good call, still so early. I mean, even with 5 games in your conference that you're playing, as you said, Monrovia hasn't even played a conference game yet. So it's really kind of hard to make heads or tails out of which way this thing's going to go as we progress through the second half of the season here. But, you look at some things that kind of pop out to me. Tri-West on a 5-game win streak, going down to Switzerland County and winning their holiday tournament down there, playing really solid basketball, coming back up, and as you said, beating their county rival Danville by 20 last night in the first round of the Hendricks County tournament. Boy, when you look at them in the box score, Mike, if you see 3 or 4 guys in double figures, it's not uncommon. They can beat you in a number of different ways. Just a really solid all-around team. Obviously, we get a chance to see them a little bit more in person. But, boy, they just got some really quick guards. Daniel Thomas. They've got some Ryan Miller's a great shooter. They got some height down low, and it's athletic height. It's not kind of that thick, lumbering, slow moving, slow footed big guy. They've got some guys that can really, really explode in Parker Anderson and Lane Barnard down low. And then Jackson Paris played really well last night, shooting the ball and distributing it. So it's just a really solid all-around team. The only thing you got to be careful of is, hopefully don't peak too early. Now, I know Coach Strine does a great job with those guys, but, when you start to see that little bit of a run there, you just hope that that's not happening there. With Beech Grove, man, they've been flat out unlucky. The Hornets on that 3-game losing streak, and they've lost those 3 games by a combined 9 points, including a OT heartbreaker last night against Bishop Chatard. It looks like Bishop Moore, and I know we've talked about the Moore kids before, Bishop being a great quarterback for Beech Grove, playing on the basketball team. We know he's an even better baseball player. He's been out of the box scores for the last couple games, so I don't know if he's hurt. Need to kind of check in on that, see if I can get any insight on that. But that's a big hit for the Hornets, and hopefully he's okay. You don't want to see an athlete of that caliber go down for any kind of injury, so hopefully it's nothing major there. Triton Central, man, they're just doing what Triton Central does. They're winning. The Tigers 7-2, sitting, as you said, atop of the HLC. They got a big win over Roncalli, Mike, last week, handing the Royals their first loss of the season. Coach James got the boys playing well. They've got some decent non-conference opponents coming up in Cecina, Heritage Christian, and Eastern Hancock. And then when you look at their schedule down the finish here, they have 3 straight conference games to end the season, which could be huge in determining who walks away with that HLC title. Usually if you look at a team's schedule, you're going to see at least a non-conference game or 2 mixed in there at the end to get ready for sectionals. But they finished their schedule with 3 straight HLC opponents. So that's going to be interesting to see how they finish up. So really good stuff there. And you talk about good stuff. Let's get an update here on the girls' side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the same thing as we talked about the boys. It looks like only a couple of the girls have played 3 opponents right now. So right now, Beech Grove being 2-0 is leading the conference. And then Triton Central and Monrovia are sitting at 2-1. Indian Creek 2-2, Tri-West 1-2, and Speedway 0-3. Over the whole season, Speedway is 7-6, Tri-West is 8-6, Indian Creek 8-9, Monrovia 12 wins, 4 losses. Beech Grove and Triton Central both have 10 wins, with Triton Central with 3 losses and Beech Grove with 6 losses. So only 2 teams are below 500. Nope. Only one team is below 500, and that's an 8-9 team, so that's a really competitive girls league right there.
Yeah. And, like we said from the beginning of the season, this was going to be a close race. And so far it's shaping up to be really just that, almost halfway through the season. conference schedule-wise. 4 of the 6 teams have 2 wins, as you said, and that's a testament that I think what we're going to see here down the stretch with these last couple games left. Beech Grove sitting up there atop, but they still got a lot of work to do. Again, 3 of their 6 games are conference matchups when you look down the stretch there, along with some tough non-conference opponents, something that I know Coach Selk will see as a positive to help prepare them for sectional. But again, you can't forget about Triton Central Monrovia. Both of those teams are 2-1 in conference and playing really good ball. Triton Central's on a 5-game winning streak. Like we said, all they do is win, win, win. The Bulldogs, they just took down a really good Southmont team last night who was 12-1 coming into that game. And even a couple of their losses were against some really good competition there. So, as we've talked about too before with both Triton Central and Monrovia, they've got a couple of big time ballers down there. Mary Rose Felling for Triton Central and Zoe Walls for Monrovia have just been balling out. Felling is averaging 24.5 a game, while Walls is up to almost 21. So you're talking top 20 in the state for both of those young ladies. That's a great accomplishment. I know both of their coaches would probably tell you it's a team environment, and that's absolutely true. But boy, it sure helps when you've got a stud that you can rely on to go out there and get that for you night in and night out. So really excited to see down the stretch here with the girls what that's going to look like. So pretty awesome stuff there. And you talk about awesome and legendary, Mike. Girls wrestling is already coming up on regionals this weekend. If you followed the rundown that I put out last week, I shouted out all of our sectional winners, runners-up, and third-place participants. Those girls all are advancing to regionals this weekend. And when you look at the HLC, there's just, and if I had more time, I would have loved to have been able to do this, kind of look and see what the overall representation was in terms of the number of participants here, because we've really got some real depth here on the girls wrestling side. We've got 4 of our 6 teams that are going to be at the Bloomington South Regional. And just to give you a quick rundown here, at 105, you'll have Ella Nybert of Indian Creek. 110, Elizabeth Dowdy of Indian Creek. 110, Ava Elliott of Monrovia. 115, Mabel Adebayo of Speedway. 115, Elsa Major, Indian Creek. 115, Casey Trivet of Tri-West. 120, Kaylee Williams, Monrovia. 130, Jenilyn Dale of Speedway. 130, Jessie Scalaro of Tri-West. 130, Madeline Geyer of Indian Creek. 135, Camber Posey of Tri-West. Also at 135, Molly Thomas of Speedway. At 140, Emily Hernandez from Speedway. 145, Mia Custer-Smith of Speedway. 155, Kimberly Virgil of Monrovia. At 170, Grace Marshall of Tri-West. And I just want to say that, unfortunately, she will not be able to wrestle due to a torn ACL that she suffered in the championship match in sectionals. Talked to her today in the hallway. You could just tell, she was so deflated. Just try to tell her to keep her spirits up. She's a fantastic young lady, works extremely hard, valuable asset to the Tri-West community. She moved in a couple years ago. So you just feel for her, but certainly want to make sure we shouted her out there. And then at 235, Brianna Parapino from Speedway. So spark plugs, Indian Creek, Tri-West, Monrovia, a lot of great representation there at that Bloomington South Regional. So congratulations and good luck to all those girls. Mike, you want to tell us about who will be representing the HLC up at the Muncie Regional?
Yeah, so that's going to be Triton Central and Beech Grove. We have about 110 pounds from Triton Central, Harper Young, and Danica Ray from Beech Grove. At 115, we have Aubrey Prop from Triton Central. At 120, Anna McCarty from Beech Grove. At 140, Trinity Coleman from Beech Grove. At 145, we have Farrah Cohen from Triton Central and Caitlin Dibberin from Beech Grove. At 170, we have Lillian Seagal at Triton Central and Jocelyn Stinson at Beech Grove. 190, we have Zoe Gray, Triton Central. And at 235, we have, is that Khalil?
Callie.
Callie.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Burmeister. So all the schools, are being represented. It's going to be that we're going to have some regional champions. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember which one it was, and I meant to make a note of it. I know in that Bloomington South Regional, there is an HLC matchup in the first round. For some reason, off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's either at 1:30 with Jesse Scalaro and Madeline Geyer, or it might be that 1:35 matchup between Posey and Thomas. So you kind of hate to see one of them get, maybe knocked out early. I know there's wrestlebacks to try to advance on. That's going to be a tough road there. But yeah, I think we're going to see some regional winners here and some girls move on. And so again, this congratulations. This sport is growing leaps and bounds. It's great to see the girls, fully sanctioned and having their full tournament this year. So again, congratulations and best of luck to all them. On the swimming side, there hasn't been a whole lot to report. If you know of anything awesome that's happening in the pool, I know we have a couple of schools in the conference that don't have swim teams, but if you know of something great that's happening, please let us know. I don't want to always come on and just talk about the Tri-West swim team because my son is swimming, but I do know we've got some really great swimmers that are doing great stuff. We were out at Lawrence Central last week in a relay meet. We came in second behind North Central of Indianapolis. So that's pretty, and I mean, there were some pretty big schools there. As you can imagine, Warren Central was there. Southport was there. Trying to remember some of the others. Obviously, LC had a couple of teams in. Park Tudor might have been there. So there was a lot of great competition at that relay meet. And for the boys to come in second, we have a couple of great swimmers that I think are going to make deep runs in the swimming state championship series. So if you know of anything great at your school that's going on with swimming, please pass it along. We'll be more than happy to relay that along and shout them out. So, good to catch up there. So I want to kind of wrap up here, Mike. I know we were talking off air a little bit. There's been a couple of topics that, you and I kind of talk about day in and day out in our conversations. And, one that kind of hit a little close to home here this week is, and we've hinted around this with some other conversations that we had, particularly with NIL, maybe becoming a thing at the high school level at some point. And it's this concept of transferring, right? The IHSAA has always had to kind of deal with this. It's something that's been going on for a long time. It's not new, but, certainly in this day and age of these young kids that see the kids that they look up to, kind of going off of what we were talking about at the beginning of the show here, these young boys and girls, they look up at these college athletes, right? And some of them may be brothers and sisters to these athletes. And, it's the free agency idea at the collegiate level. And we see in that carry over to the high school level. When you look at transferring, there's always a couple of different reasons, right? And again, as you and I were kind of talking about off air, and I want to get your perspective on this. My whole thing is I was kind of looking at this. We had a student athlete who transferred out of Tri-West at break. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you look at it from the situation of, look, I'm behind on the depth chart of somebody who is going to hold that position for a while. Let's just say you're a sophomore and the person ahead of you is a junior. And so that they've got that position locked down. They're a D1 recruit, barring injury at that position. You're probably not going to see any playing time, right, on the regular, maybe mop up duty, that kind of thing. What is the appropriate response to that? Is it gut it out, get better, and be ready to take over once that athlete graduates and moves on, and then you finish out the time that you have, hopefully having learned under them and improved and gotten better? Or maybe do you change your position if you're athletic enough? We see that happen a lot. Or is it kind of to pout about it and cry about it and say, woe is me, I'm never going to be able to shine because this person's ahead of me, and I'm going to take my talents to another school? And that kind of also bleeds into and, over into, then I think when that kind of thing happens, you get criticism, right? You start poking holes at the program and, well, I'm not playing because such and such in politics, and, I'm being held down and the grass is greener over here, so I'm just going to take my ball and go somewhere else, right? So I guess my point to that is, and what I'd kind of like to get from you and your perspective is, A, is there an appropriate time and situation to transfer as a high school student athlete? And if so, where do you kind of see the line there on that?
I mean, that's such a loaded question. It's so tough, and I think the easy answer is that it's individual specific on what's
Mhm.
happening in that school. Um, so I think you know if you have a solid program where top down communication has been happening, and if the community is really involved, and it's you're just when you're part of the team, it makes you feel different, right? Like it's a walking around the hallways, oh, he's on the football team type of atmosphere. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I don't think you get kids who transfer very much. Those kids want to be there. They want to play. They feel like they're a part of a family, and that's just where they're going to be. They're going to be at that school, and that's just not the football program. It's probably like everything. It's
Mhm.
friendships that they've had since elementary school. Are those still strong? Is it mom and dad supportive of the community? Do they get along with everybody in the community? Like, there's so many different things that could happen into someone's life that makes them want to transfer or not transfer.
Mhm.
Um, if you're a backup, but this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to speak out both sides of my mouth, during this conversation. Um, if you're a Brownsburg and you are a third string lineman, sophomore, and juniors or seniors are in front of you, and you're not going to be able to play, there might be a freshman above you, right? Because it's Brownsburg and they have huge kids. Why? Why are those kids not transferring? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that's the crux of it. Is it because they can just win state championships? Is it because Brownsburg provides a family atmosphere where these kids just love being involved in football, no matter if they start or don't start? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, but I don't know how many kids are transferring from Avon, Brownsburg, these big
Mhm.
powerhouse schools. But like Tri West, right outside of Brownsburg, you would think would clean up on all of these kids who aren't getting playing time, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because you're talking about like a D1 quarterback. Oscar Fry is going to be a D1 quarterback,
That's right.
and so where are the kids behind him? Why are they not coming to Tri West, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
One of them actually just transferred to Danville, right?
Mhm.
So, and that's a question that I think all schools have to ask themselves when a kid chooses a school right beside you. Why? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Is it okay that we have a position already, like we already have a quarterback? Is it because of the way the school looks? Is it because of he has friends there or family members in that area? There's all kinds
Mhm.
of things to look at, but I'm surprised of the lack of transfers from Brownsburg to Tri West.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know if I've ever answered your question. I think it's too complicated, and I think it's just an individual basis. I think at the end of the day, in my head, it makes a lot more sense from kids to transfer from schools where they don't feel a belonging,
Mhm.
right? Um, so it's really hard, and it hits harder for schools Tri-West size and probably smaller when a kid has played there since kindergarten and decides to leave so that they can get a starting position or a chance to play. I think it's a symptom of society and where we're at. Um, but I can't blame him. If I'm the dad and I want my kid to actually play the position that he wants to play, and he gets beat out and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to play, and there's a position somewhere else that he or another school where he can play at, you're only in high school one time, right? You only get a chance to play 4 years. So I get it. I get moving to a place where you can actually get a chance to play your last 2 years, like if he was a sophomore, right? So you play your junior and senior year, and then can actually talk about it later on that, hey, I played high school football. Where if
Yeah.
you didn't, he wouldn't be playing at all. So
Yeah. And I guess I agree with the position of, look, if nobody's happy, then there's no reason to beat your head against the wall, right? I mean, you don't want a malcontent in your locker room. You don't want that headache as a coach, as a player. You don't want to be a part of a program where you don't feel appreciated, regardless of whatever position you're in, whether you're first on the depth chart, third on the depth chart, whatever, right? And I do think, just based on what little knowledge I have and know, that Brownsburg does do a program like that, and I'm sure there are other programs in the state. I imagine Coach Ralph out at New Pal probably does the same thing. You probably see this at like Center Grove and that kind of thing, of building that family atmosphere. And I'm willing to bet that there are probably a large number of kids who could excel at smaller local schools in and around that area, but choose to stay a part of a winning program where they're going to be coached up to be better individuals, even though they may not be able to maximize the playing time in their athletic career in high school. And so I do think that, yeah, if you're in a situation where you love the sport, obviously you want to dedicate the time and energy into it, and it's just not a good situation, then yeah, go be happy somewhere else. And I'll wish you all the best. I just have a problem with this, concept and idea of, the grass is greener. I've got a vendetta against the coach. My son isn't being utilized the way that he should. That's all that vicarious, like living through a kid, because you're living out whatever went down with you 20 or 30 years ago, right? And I think that's where it gets toxic. And I don't know. I mean, I would hope that a parent would legitimately take their son or daughter's opinion into an account of whether or not it's the right thing to do or not, because I'm sure it's not easy on them, like you said, especially in a smaller community like a Tri-West, where you've grown up with these kids that you're leaving to go somewhere else and chase maybe a 2-year experience that may or may not even pan out for you, may not even work out, right? You're taking a risk. And we've seen that even just locally with kids who have transferred to Tri-West and it's not worked out, and then attempted to try to transfer back somewhere else and were denied for that reason. So yeah, I get it. It is. I think I like your position of it is kind of an individual thing. I just would hope that it would be utilized. And look, let's be honest. We know it's always for academics, right? Right.
Yeah,
It's always academics, right? But I mean, honestly, though, knowing that it is for athletic purposes, that it is for the right reasons, and that is making the kid happy, giving them an opportunity to be able to fulfill and live out their desires and their wishes, versus somebody having a vendetta that goes back however long, or they feel like, their son or daughter was being screwed over by a coach. That would be really interesting too, by the way, Mike. And I know you and I talked about this briefly. We would love the opportunity to bring some of our student athletes who are in HLC schools on with us to talk to them and get their perspective on things. I would love to hear from some coaches on this as well. So I'll try to tag some of the coaches that I know follow us on X when we post this episode up, and kind of let them know, hey, we talked about this, and see if they're willing to share their perspective on it too. Because it would be kind of interesting to hear both the student athlete side and the coaches side. Obviously, you and I being parents, we have that perspective there. So that'd be kind of interesting to hear that for sure. So.
Yeah, and I think the one side that we didn't talk about there, and I forget if you kind of brought it up or not, is the top level kids, right? So these kids are playing above their high school, if you will, right? Like Jack Sorgi, right? Like he's a Division I quarterback playing for Tri-West, right? Like is that going to prepare him the best? If he does end up going to Louisville where he committed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that better than, going to a 6A school, transferring to Zionsville, transferring to Avon, and playing against 6A, competition, faster, bigger kids, and then moving to Louisville, right? What's going to help him develop the most? And that's something that him and his dad, and I think his dad probably knows more about football than me. I'm just going to guess, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, I'm just going to put that out there. But just kind of like thinking about what is going to be best for him as well, right? So we don't really talk about those top players. And my son, he was telling me, and this is from a high school kid, so I don't know if any of this is true, but like Avon is down a couple kids because they transferred to one of those, like, I don't think it was like IMG, but one of those type of academies that get you ready for top level college. Like Lillamere up in Fort Wayne or wherever that's located, something like that. So, you have kids, and I think that kid from Brownsburg did that too, right? The one that was going to go to Purdue, then backed out. Yeah, Catchings.
Cameron Catchings.
Yeah, he went to like one of those prep schools. So, do we look down on him because he went to Georgia to play, that to get him ready for Division I basketball? I don't know. Do we look down on a kid who, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but like a kid from Attica, the smallest school in the state, and going to go play at a 4 or 5A school to show them? Because I think we talked about that with like McLaughlin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just one of those questions where it's just like, man, I don't know what's going to be best for the kid and what's best for the community. I think, I don't know, like my oldest son, right? He got to play, and we talked about, is Tri-West the best place for him, and could he go someplace else to get different kinds of coaching and different kind of weight training and to get different things? I don't know, but there was something special about him being able to go, playing little league soccer as a 3-year-old to, tackle football to basketball, and all of a sudden now we get to watch him grow through the Tri-West program and be on that field, on Friday nights. It's a pretty amazing thing to watch your child grow and do that. And so I think something really big has to happen for you to transfer your kids somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like something's had to happen where you just don't feel the love anymore.
Right. Yep. 100%. Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, like I said, I think it's one of those things that's always going to be debated or debatable as a topic, right? When, if ever, is it the appropriate time to do it? And, factoring in all those different things that we talked about there. Mike, I had another topic that I wanted to address. You think we got enough time to hit that up? Yeah, let's do it real quick. So you were kind of talking about there a little bit too, opportunities. And one of the things you talked about with Malachi was like, would maybe like strength and conditioning opportunities be better at bigger schools? And I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not, but over the break, it kind of caused a little bit of a stir on Twitter. Noblesville just released some images and video of a new state-of-the-art workout facility that they installed, a weight room up at their high school. And it led a lot of people to kind of question, like, why is that amount of money being invested into a weight room and that kind of thing. But beyond that, it kind of got me thinking a little bit. And I know you and I have talked a lot about this, just in casual conversation about the importance of strength training. And there's no doubt that in this day and age, with as hyper-focused as we are as a society, right? Not just you and I, but I think across the board, I feel pretty confident in saying that when you look at families who have, kind of to what you were just talking about a minute ago, high caliber athletes, right? Like people who are being scoped out for Division I, even Division II. I mean, type of environments to go and play in. that it's not just year round, playing in the sport, but how much emphasis and focus is being put on strength training and strength conditioning, whatever you want to call it, cross training, fast twitch movement, all that kind of stuff. I guess the question that I think we need to kind of pause on a little bit and reflect on, and again, I want to get your input on this, is basically, is that kind of stuff as important, more important, or less important than focusing on the technique in the sport that you're involved in, right? In other words, are we pushing the weight room too much? And I guess I would start off by maybe playing devil's advocate on this, because I think I kind of know. Maybe I'm jumping it here a little bit, putting the cart before the horse. I think I kind of know where you're probably going to come down on this. My thing would be, I kind of think we are going a little bit overboard on the weight training and putting a little bit too much emphasis on it. And I think one of the things that makes me believe that is, just alone, the number of injuries that we're seeing. Are we getting kids too big, too fast, right? Are we putting too much strain? That amount of muscle mass that some of these kids are carrying on them, is that contributing? For example, I know there's a lot of questions about the number of ACL tears that we've seen with girls, in particular soccer, basketball, and volleyball. Obviously you see almost every big time 6A school offensive lines all braced up on the knees, just for the protection, ankle braces on the soccer field and the basketball court. Basically every athletic trainer is saying you got to be wearing ankle braces. Just because of how much wear and tear we're putting on those joints there. So I don't know. That's kind of my position on it. And then the other thing that I would say along with that too is, when you put so much more emphasis on that, I think you can lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, you still have to be fundamentally sound in the technique of the sport that you're in. I'll give you a real quick example of that. I was talking to a wrestling coach, and I said, when I go to these wrestling tournaments, and my son is a senior wrestler for Tri-West, I would look at a lot of other schools' wrestling teams, and they were jacked. They looked a lot bigger, more cut than us. But yet, you'd see some of these kids step out on the mat and get dominated because their technique wasn't good. Kind of the old look like Tarzan, play like Jane thing. You can look like $1 million, but if you don't have the technique down in the sport that you're in, is it really serving you any good to be spending all that time just putting up a part of, being a part of the 900-pound club or whatever you want to call it? So that's my perspective on it. What do you have to say?
Yeah, that's what I have to say. You know what I mean?
Well said.
Thank
Kudos.
you.
No,
America, by God, we're number one in fatness, and there has to be somewhere, some start of a health trend to get us away from being so fat. And lifting weights has shown time and time again to be one of the number one ways that we can obviously build muscle. And when you build muscle, it's going to burn more calories automatically just sitting there just because you have more muscle on you, right? I don't think anyone's going to argue that more muscle and being more toned and being more fit is not is a bad thing. Everybody wants that. So the question is directly at the sport itself, and what kind of weights are you lifting and how are you lifting, and are you under somebody who knows what they're doing? One of the questions that came up in the conversation not too long ago was, are high school strength coaches certified strength and training, right? I know there's multiple different organizations out there that you can go through to get a certificate in strength and conditioning, personal training, whatever you want to call it. Have we ever looked at, strength coaches and said, hey, are you even trained to do this? You know what I'm saying? Because there's so many high school football coaches that are the strength trainers, but does that really give them the necessary tools to know how to actually put on weight and what is actually the best way to gain strength for your student, right? I think we
Mm-hmm.
put a lot of trust in those guys in the school system without really knowing their background.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to kind of look at, okay, what do we want to teach in school, right? If your school has an advanced physical education class, like an APE class or a weight and conditioning class, right? Are they teaching an overall, any kid that comes in there, this is the proper techniques to lift. These kind of lifts are going to get you stronger. We want to do the whole posterior chain when we bench this or when we squat that. We're going to do differentiation, so we're hitting stabilization muscles and all the nonsense that you can go into when it comes to strength training. Or is your strength and training coaches just there because sports? And the only kids who take it are sports people, and you're just trying to get them bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, we have to kind of look as parents and go, what are we doing in my school?
Mm-hmm.
What do I feel is the most necessary thing, right? And we have to ask questions. And when you
Mm-hmm.
don't ask questions, you're just kind of going in there blind and being like, sure, I think he's doing a good bench press, or he's squatting correctly with using the belt, even though we don't know if he's using the belt or if they even squat in class. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think overtraining is going to do more harm than weight training, right? Playing basketball, you know, 9 to 10 months out of the year is probably worse for you than going in there and lifting heavy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's a reason why Europe, who's obviously phenomenal in soccer, is more dominant in us all the time, and they take a lot of time off.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go through the grind that we do with our kids in baseball and soccer and everything else now. And, in
Mm-hmm.
basketball, I think we're just freakishly talented, and that's why we dominate, in the world. But, Europe is closely, is getting really right behind us. Some of our best players in the NBA are European.
Yeah.
Um, so I know I'm skipping around. I'm not really answering your question. When it comes to a specific sport, I think technique is very, very important. If you don't have proper technique, it's really not going to matter, right? Um, However, we can look at, I'm going to use Tri-West for an example. A couple years ago, we went and played Batesville in regionals,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a clear distinction in strength and
Mm-hmm.
size, right? Um, we had a chance to win that game, to put them away, and we kind of let it get a turnover here, and this thing happened there, and they ended up beating us. But you could see in the trenches, you could see when the ball carrier ran the ball, they were still moving. We were gassed, and that's because of how strong they were and how much more they weighed. My my freshman son actually got to start that game, and I think it was the very first play of the game. Um, he at playing safety, he went in to go make a tackle, and he got hit by two offensive linemen and just flattened him. Right? It is the funniest thing as a father to see your son, who thinks he's awesome as a freshman, just get
Uh-huh.
demolished.
Yep.
Because it's a good lesson. It's like, hey, you got to get in the weight room, right? So going back to weights, yeah, I think it's really, really important to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, technique is always going to be the best. Um, I think I go back to Kevin Durant. I forget how much basketball players bench, especially back then, for their combine. But I have this distinct memory of seeing him like barely bench 135 or 185 or whatever the weight was, and like
Mm-hmm.
it was a huge controversy on how weak he was. Now you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about a 7-footer, arm span. That's so much harder to lift than someone my size who's like 5'9". But
Mm-hmm.
that was a big thing about how weak he was. And what happened? He's a Hall of Famer, caliber
Right.
national champion or NBA champion. So did
Mm-hmm.
strength hurt him? No, it was his talent that got him to where he is.
Right.
Um, so, dude, I don't know. I know volleyball players. They have to have quick twitch muscles. They have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to jump fast. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they see that ball coming, they have to make that reaction time and jump high and get that block, or go lateral movement to get the ball. Does strength training take a part there, yeah, right. They've got to be able to strengthen those muscles. You're talking about
Mhm.
world class sprinters and track and field. Like 80% of the time they are in the weight room strengthening their hamstrings, strengthening their glutes, strengthening their quads, strengthening their core, right?
Mhm.
That's how they get fast, right? So does technique have a place in track and field? Absolutely. You can break down Usain Bolt and how perfection he is a perfected runner. It is
Mhm.
hands
Mhm.
down the best technical runner out there, right? So yeah, man, you have to have strength and conditioning. You have to have it. Now, do you have to have Noblesville's gym? Do you have to have Cascades or Avon's or Brownsburg's gym to get bigger, stronger, faster? Absolutely not. You have to have kids buy into the program and want it. You know,
Mhm.
and I talk about that too. Is like, you teach social studies, right?
Mhm.
So your job is to make kids want to know or learn, econ.
Mhm.
No kid wants to learn econ. You
Right.
know, it's like it's your job is to make kids learn math. Like
Yeah.
what? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like unless you're a high level kid, ain't nobody want to sit there and learn geometry or algebra 2. You know what I mean? They're just, why am I here?
Right. Right.
But the teachers who make a difference get those kids to buy into their English class, to their math class, right?
Mhm.
And those kids love that teacher, and because they build a learning environment that makes it fun for them, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
as a strength coach at a school who does not have a great weight room, right? Or even the one that does, like if you're going to be a great strength coach, you've got to teach these kids what it looks like to have fun lifting,
Yep.
to want to be in there lifting weights. You know what I'm saying? If
Yep.
you make it a crappy time, no one's going to do it. Like the best athletes in the world they're still 16 years old. They're still 17 years old. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? If it's bad and it's not a good environment, they don't want to be there.
Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
we have to deal with it as classroom teachers, right? Like we
Yeah,
see
absolutely.
kids who roll their eyes, who put their heads down, who do whatever. It's our job to make learning happen. So
Yep.
strength and training, you have to make that program happen. It
Yep.
it starts with, the principal, athletic director, coaches, strength and conditioning, mom and dad, all on the same page to get kids to want to work hard to be their best.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's hard to do. Very few programs are that good, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I
No,
think
that's
I'm sorry, the last thing I wanted to say on that, but there's also a difficulty, I think, at smaller schools like the HLC, where you go in as a sophomore and that's your position for the next 3 years, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Jack Sorgi or by Evan Clark, or by Bishop Moore, but they know they're going to be the starting quarterback for the next couple of years. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So what's going to drive them to be better? And so you
Mhm.
think about the outside linebacker, who goes around and goes, I'm bigger than everybody else. I'm stronger than everybody else. I started as a freshman. No one's taking my spot. I'm the
Right.
defensive tackle, for the last 2 years. No one's going to take my spot. There's no
Mhm.
one pushing them. When you talk about like Brownsburg or Center Grove, those kind of schools, that person right behind you, the number two, is not that far behind, you
Right.
know? So
Mhm.
you've got to be like, I want to keep starting. I got to work harder than that kid.
Yep.
Small schools, you don't always have that.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's, and I hate it, man. I wish I could just wave a wand and tell you the answer to both of your questions, but it's
Well,
convoluted, it's complicated.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we're having these discussions, just to kind of, get people to wrestle with it and think about it. And, I know people get really strong opinions on both of those types of topics. So, maybe if they heard us say something that might resonate with them or help them, strengthen the position that they had or change their mind about something, that's why we're doing this thing is, we all have these opinions. They're all things that we sit around, whether they be in the gym, at the school, at the local, restaurant, in people's homes. These conversations are being had all across the country. And so, obviously we're throwing our voices out there. And as we always say, we're interested to know what you think about it. So as we say all the time, let us know, fire us off an email, let us know on social media. We'd love the engagement aspect to it. If you have a thought or an idea that you want to have heard, voice your opinion and let us know about it. But I like the way that you approach both of those, as those are really, really good responses there. So,
hey, so just to ruin that compliment, I did want to say you can't be halfway in it, right? And what I mean by that is either you're going to have the top-notch, top-of-the-line, absolute Pinterest beautiful, Instagram worthy weight room, right? Or in my opinion, you should have a boiler room, right? And it is just like trash, not trash, but like just awful. And it is rusted plates, and you're afraid you're going to get tetanus in there, and you have the heat up to 100 degrees, and the kids are just in there and they're just putting in work, right? Or you're going to have the real fancy, nice stuff. But like when you're in the middle, that's what sucks, because kids are going to see other places and they're going to complain and they're going to, do this. But if you have a really bad gym where it's just like, this is where, the dirt hits the road or whatever the phrase is, you can sell that to kids.
Sure.
You can sell that, you can sell how beautiful it is, and you can sell how bad it is, because we go in there and all we do is work and we put in, we don't have to have all this fancy crap that all these other people do. We're the underdogs. We're going to do this or whatever, but when you're stuck in the middle and you just have, okay, there's really nothing to sell it on. What I mean?
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
that I think it's even a tougher job for a strength coach or for an AD or for whoever to sell the weight room, So
yeah, it's about ownership, right? It's about ownership. Like, you got to have
100%.
pride in saying, like, this is our place, this is ours, this is our house, this is where we put in our work, this is where we get better. And you have to have that junkyard dog mentality, no matter if you've got fancy new state-of-the-art racks or if you went to a local auction and picked up leftovers from a foreclosure of a gym, right? I mean, you're just scrapping it all together, but you take pride in that. You say, this is ours. This is where the work goes down, and this is where we produce champions. And if you have that mentality, then to your point, it doesn't really matter. Weights are weights, man. I mean, 15 pounds is 15 pounds, right? When you put those plates on there, it won't lie. If you can move weight, you can move weight. And again, that goes back to what I really like what you said is, as educators, this really resonates with me. You've got to generate the buy-in. You've got to get kids excited. You're a motivator. And that's what I tell kids all the time is, look, I'm not here. There's nothing that I can tell you about economics that you can't go on a YouTube or some other website and find the information. So I'm not a fountain of knowledge up here at the head of the classroom. Like, I could stand up here and talk and head knowledge, all this stuff I know about economics. That's going to bore you to death, right? My job is to try to connect that information to your point as to why you should care about it, right? Why do I need to know what scarcity and supply and demand are? And as soon as I start saying that, eyes roll in the back of the head, kids, but then if I can at least kind of connect it to something that relates to them, then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I kind of see that. I understand why that's so important now. So yeah, we're in the game of being motivators, right? We're motivational speakers each and every day. We're trying to have to sell kids, buy in, why they should care about what we're trying to put forward to them each and every day. And it's no different in the weight room.
Yep. Perfect.
All right, man. Well, that will wrap it up for us. Unless there's anything else you want to add before we close it up.
Nope. I'd like to say go Oregon Ducks. They're going to win on Friday.
I wouldn't mind that one bit. I
see it an Oregon, Miami. So that'd be two birds fighting for the national championship.
There we go. And maybe Oregon can bring their duck and put it back in the canal again and float it down downtown Indianapolis.
Is it in Indianapolis?
No, you know what? They're playing down in Atlanta, but I know when they made that announcement to join the Big Ten, right? They got that big inflatable duck. So maybe just to kind of rib all the IU fans here in the Indy area, they could get another inflatable duck after they whoop up on the Hoosiers and say, you enjoyed your 15 minutes of fame. All right. Before we start getting eggs thrown at us and hate mail coming in, we'll wrap it up with that. All right. Thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning in. We'll see you again next week for another episode of the Hoosier Legend Speakers.
But to be the man.